My name is Claire Whitmore. I am 34 years old, and on a Tuesday evening in October, the man I had agreed to marry stood in our kitchen, leaned against the counter with his arms crossed, and smiled the way people smile when they have already decided the outcome of a conversation and are simply waiting for you to catch up. He looked at me with that particular ease. The ease of a man who has never once had to wonder whether the person across from him would stay, and he said, "Sasha is moving in with us. She needs a place to land. It's temporary. You'll just have to deal with it." He did not ask. He did not lower his voice. He did not soften the edges of it with an apology or a question, or even a pause that suggested he understood what he was saying. He said it the way you announce a change in dinner plans. Flat, final, already decided. I looked at him for a moment. I kept my face very still, and then I said, "Perfect." He blinked. He had not expected that word. He had expected protest. He had expected the version of me that had spent 3 years learning to make herself manageable inside this relationship, the version that swallowed things and rephrased things and waited for a better moment that never quite came. He had expected me to negotiate. Instead, I reached into my bag, which was sitting on the counter where I had set it when I came home, and I pulled out a white envelope. I walked it to the kitchen table and I set it in front of him. "Open it," I said. He picked it up slowly, turned it over, and pulled out what was inside. A key on a plain ring with a small tag that said Sullivan. And beneath the key, a single sheet of paper, a lease, 12-month term, first month paid, his name printed clearly at the top of the tenant line. He read it once. He read it again. His face moved through several expressions in the space of about 4 seconds. Confusion, then the beginning of understanding, then something that looked very much like the ground disappearing beneath him. "What is this?" he said. "It's an apartment," I said. "Your name is on the lease. I paid the deposit and the first month. You have until the end of October to be out of here." He looked up. "What are you talking about? This is our apartment." "No," I said, and I slid a second sheet of paper across the table. "This apartment has one name on the lease. Mine. It has always had one name on the lease. You are listed as an occupant. You are not a leaseholder. That document is a written confirmation from building management, dated last week." He stared at the papers on the table. The key sat between us like a full stop at the end of a very long sentence. What Nathan did not know was that I had been preparing for that moment for 4 months. He did not know about the attorney I had retained in July. He did not know about the separate bank account I had opened quietly in August, and into which I had redirected my direct deposit. He did not know that I had spent 3 evenings in September in Patricia Nolan's office on North High Street, going through every financial and legal thread that connected us, and separating them, one by one, with the careful attention of a woman who had grown up understanding that the only infrastructure you can truly rely on is the one you build yourself. He did not know any of it. And that was entirely by design. This is that story. Before I tell you everything, I want to stop for just a moment and ask you something. Where in the world are you right now? What time is it where you are sitting? I am genuinely asking. Drop it in the comments. It moves me every time I see someone watching from a kitchen table in Dublin at midnight, or a car parked outside a school in Houston at school pickup, or a bedroom in Manila at 3 in the morning with the sound down low. If these stories about women who were overlooked and underestimated, and who let their actions speak instead of their words, if they mean something to you, please subscribe and leave a like. It costs you nothing, and it means everything to this community. Now let me take you back to the beginning, because you cannot understand what happened in that kitchen in October without understanding who Nathan Greer was, and who I had been learning to become long before I ever met him. I grew up in Zanesville, Ohio. My mother, Diane Whitmore, worked dispatch for the County Transit Authority and took weekend shifts at a grocery store called Carriage Hill Foods for the first 12 years of my life. My father left when I was 6 years old. There was no dramatic departure. He did not slam a door or make a speech. He simply came home less and less, and then one day he stopped coming home at all, and about 8 months after that, he stopped returning phone calls. And then he was just gone the way weather is gone, completely, without explanation, as though it had never been a feature of the landscape at all. My mother did not fall apart. I watched her very carefully for signs of falling apart, the way children watch for things they do not have words for yet, and she did not do it. She ironed her uniform every morning at 5:30. She made coffee. She went to work. She came home. She made dinner. She asked me about school. She went to bed. And she did that every day, without complaint, without drama, without asking anyone to witness how hard it was. I understood from watching her that the world does not organize itself around your needs. You organize yourself around the world, and you build what you can with what you have, and you do it without waiting for someone to tell you that you deserve it. By the time I was 31 and moving into an apartment on Livingston Avenue in Columbus with a man named Nathan Greer, I had paid off my student loans 2 years ahead of schedule, built a savings account that gave me what I can only describe as a physical sensation of being able to breathe, and worked my way to senior financial analyst at a regional healthcare company where I managed accounts worth significantly more than anything in my personal life. I did not talk about money the way Nathan did. Nathan talked about money the way people talk about the weather, constantly, casually, as background texture, rather than something you earned with discipline and time. He worked in commercial insurance, managed a portfolio of mid-size accounts for a firm downtown, drove a car that was a year newer than he needed, and wore the comfortable confidence of a man who had never had to calculate whether he could afford something before he reached for it. He grew up in Westerville. His parents were still married, still in the house where he was raised, still hosting Sunday dinners. His mother called him twice a week. His father had paid for his college without loans. He was not a bad person. I want to be precise about this, because precision matters in the telling of it. Nathan Greer was not a villain. He was a man who had been given things without having to ask, and who had consequently never developed the habit of asking, who had consequently never fully understood that the people around him were not simply available, that availability was something you earned, that care was something you showed up for, not something you assumed. We met at a housewarming party in the Short North neighborhood of Columbus. A mutual friend named Delia had just bought a condo and filled it with people and wine and a playlist that kept drifting between decades. Nathan was standing near the kitchen doorway when I arrived, talking to someone I did not know, and he had the quality some people have of seeming very comfortable in borrowed spaces. We talked for 2 hours, he asked good questions, he was funny without trying too hard. When I left that night, he asked for my number, and I gave it to him, and he texted me before I had reached my car. We dated for 8 months before I moved into his place. Then, 13 months after that, we found the apartment on Livingston together. 2 bedrooms, 3rd floor, a building that smelled like fresh paint and new carpet, and the particular optimism of a place that has not yet accumulated anyone's history. The rent was more than I would have chosen alone, but Nathan was enthusiastic, and the rooftop deck was beautiful, and I was 31, and I had never in my adult life let myself have something simply because it was beautiful. I paid the deposit. It was $4,200. Nathan said he would cover it next month when his year-end bonus cleared. The lease had one signature on it, mine. His bonus came in December. He bought a new television. He never mentioned the deposit again. I did not bring it up either. I put it in the part of my mind where I put things that I am not ready to name yet. Things that do not yet feel like a pattern, but that I am watching carefully. I should tell you about Sasha Ellard, because she is not the main character of this story, but she is essential architecture. Sasha was Nathan's ex-girlfriend from before me. They had dated for just under 2 years, ended it in a way Nathan described as mutual and adult and clean, and remained, in his telling, simply friends. I had met her exactly once, at a group dinner at a Thai restaurant in the Short North, about 6 months into my relationship with Nathan. She arrived in a green dress and sat 2 seats away from me, and spent the evening being lively and sharp, and occasionally directing a particular kind of look across the table that I recognized, but could not yet categorize. Not hostile. Not performatively warm. Something in between. The look of someone who is assessing what replaced them and has not yet decided what to do with the information. Nathan mentioned her name with a frequency that I noticed before I understood. Sasha used to love this neighborhood. Sasha and I actually tried that restaurant once. Sasha would find that hilarious. He said her name the way people mention a place they used to live. with the warmth of someone who has decided the ending was fine and therefore all of it was fine, including the part where they are still clearly thinking about it. I cataloged each mention without commenting on it. I was building a record, not because I was suspicious yet, but because I was careful by nature. Careful was how I had survived the years before Nathan. Careful was the language my mother had taught me without knowing she was teaching it. There were 3 moments before October that I need to tell you about, because they form the architecture of what happened in that kitchen. The first was in December, 14 months into our time on Livingston Avenue. Nathan's office held their holiday party at a bar in the short north. Employees only. I was not invited, which was fine, which I genuinely did not mind. He came home at 1:43 in the morning. I was still awake, reading, which he knew I would be. He kissed me on the forehead and went to the bathroom, and I could smell, even from the bed, a perfume that was not mine. Not strongly, just present, the way a word is present when it has been spoken in a room, and the air still holds the shape of it. The next morning, over coffee, I said very quietly, "Your jacket smelled like someone else's perfume last night." He set down his mug. He looked at me with a specific expression I would come to know well. Not guilty, not defensive, but the expression of a man recalibrating toward the most efficient response. "It was a party," he said. "There were 60 people there. I hugged people. Don't do this, Claire." I looked at him for a moment. I closed the cabinet door I had been holding open. I poured my coffee and went to work. I did not do it, but I did not forget it either. The second moment was the following February. I noticed a transfer notification on my phone. $4,040 moved out of our joint account, the account I had set up when we moved in, the account into which I deposited the larger share of my income every month. The transfer had already cleared. Nathan told me about it that evening, after it had happened. He had a gap with his car payment, he said, and a credit card that had, in his words, gotten away from him. He had needed to cover it before the end of the billing cycle. He said, "I knew it would be fine. You always have a cushion." He said it without apology. He said it the way you describe a feature, the same way he would have said, "You always know where the scissors are." I looked at him and I said I would have appreciated being asked first. He said, "I knew you'd make it a whole thing." I did not make it a whole thing. The following week, I opened a separate account at a different bank, an institution Nathan had no visibility into, and I began quietly moving my direct deposit there. Not all at once. Gradually, the way you adjust the temperature of water so the person in it does not notice until they are already somewhere different. The third moment was July. Nathan went to Cincinnati for what he said was a work training, a Friday through Sunday trip, colleagues, a hotel near the convention center, the kind of thing he described in the same tone he described going to the dentist. Routine, administrative, slightly tedious. He came back Sunday evening. I did his laundry Monday morning because that was my habit and I had not yet dismantled my habits, and in the side pocket of his overnight bag, I found a receipt from a restaurant called The Precinct. The Precinct is a steakhouse in Cincinnati, the kind of place with white tablecloths and a wine list that requires a separate menu. The receipt was dated the Saturday of his trip. It was for 2 people. The total was $187 before tip. I looked at it for a long time. I took a photograph of it with my phone. I put the receipt back in the pocket exactly where I had found it. I went to the kitchen and made myself tea and sat at the table, and I did not allow myself to speculate, because speculation is imprecise and I am a financial analyst and I deal in documented facts. What I had was one documented fact. It was enough to begin. I called Patricia Nolan the following Monday morning at 9:15. Patricia ran a small legal practice on North High Street, specializing in family law and asset protection. She was 52 years old, silver-haired, unhurried, and possessed of the particular steadiness of a woman who had spent decades sitting across from people in the worst moments of their lives and helping them think clearly anyway. I sat across from her and I told her everything. The perfume, the transferred money, the receipt, the name that kept appearing in casual conversation with the warmth of something unfinished. She listened without interrupting. She took 3 pages of notes. When I finished, she folded her hands and said, "What do you want to protect?" I said, "Everything I built before him." She said, "Then that is where we start." Over the following 3 months, I moved with the same quiet deliberateness I had learned from watching my mother iron her uniform. I did not rush. I did not let emotion make me sloppy. I moved my direct deposit entirely into the separate account I had already opened. I contacted my bank and removed my name from the joint account after transferring the remaining balance, $4,040, plus the interest that had accumulated into my own account. I contacted my employer's human resources department and updated my emergency contact, removing Nathan and replacing him with my closest friend, Priya Anand, who knew everything and had been telling me to trust my instincts for 2 years. I adjusted the beneficiary designations on my retirement account and my life insurance policy, both of which I had neglected to update after Nathan and I got engaged the previous spring, an oversight I corrected with 2 phone calls and a form submitted by fax on a Thursday afternoon in August. Then I called the building management office for our apartment building on Livingston Avenue and asked them, in writing, to confirm the details of the lease. The response came back within 48 hours. The lease on apartment 314 was in the name of Claire Whitmore. Nathan Greer was listed as an authorized occupant. He had never been a leaseholder. He had never signed the lease. His name appeared nowhere on the legal instrument that governed who had the right to be in that apartment. I printed the email and gave it to Patricia. She put it in a folder. The folder was growing. Patricia drafted the final document in early October. It was a lease for a studio apartment on Sullivan Avenue on the west side of Columbus, $750 per month, 12-month term. The tenant was Nathan Greer. I paid the security deposit and the first month's rent, $1,500 total, out of my own account on a Wednesday afternoon. I picked up the key from the building manager the following day. I put the key and a copy of the lease inside a white envelope. I wrote Nathan's name on the outside in clear, unhurried letters. And then I went home and I made dinner, and I waited. I did not have to wait long. The Tuesday it happened, Nathan had been restless since the weekend. I recognized the quality of the restlessness, the way he moved through rooms without settling in them, the way he picked up his phone and set it down in the same motion, the way he was performing ordinary evening more than living it. He had something to say, and he was finding the shape of it. We ate dinner. He pushed the food around his plate in the particular way of a man who is not hungry because he is already somewhere else in his mind. He set down his fork. He said, "I need to talk to you about Sasha." He said it with the gentleness people use when they have decided you are not going to like something and they want credit for their tone. She was going through something, he said. Her lease had ended. Her landlord had sold the building. She had been given 60 days. She had not found anything she could afford in time. She needed somewhere temporary. 2 months, maybe 3. The second bedroom was not being used for anything. He had told her it was fine. He said, "I told her she could stay here." I looked at him. "You told her." "I'm telling you now, Nathan, that is not the same thing." He shifted in his chair. The gentleness was already thinning. "She's a friend who needs help. You're not being asked to do anything except share a space for a few weeks." "Did you ask me whether I wanted to share a space?" He looked at me with the flat patience of a man explaining something to someone who is choosing not to understand. "Claire, she needs help. This is what people do for each other. You'll just have to deal with it." And there it was. The smile. That precise, comfortable smile. The smile of a man who has never once had to wonder whether the answer would be yes. I said, "Perfect." He blinked. He opened his mouth and closed it again. I stood up from the table, walked to the counter where my bag was sitting, reached inside, and came back to the table with the white envelope. I set it in front of him. He looked at it. He looked at me. He picked it up and turned it over and slid out the key and the lease. He read the document. I watched his eyes move line by line. The address on Sullivan Avenue, his name in the tenant field, the 12-month term, the first month marked as paid. His hands went very still. "What is this?" "An apartment," I said. "Your name is on the lease. I paid the deposit and the first month." "You need to be out of here by October 31st. He set the document down. "What are you talking about? We live here together." "No," I said. I slid the building management confirmation across the table. "This apartment is in my name. Only my name. You are an occupant. You are not a leaseholder. That is confirmed in writing." He stared at the paper. He stared at the key. He looked up at me, and his face had moved past confusion into something rawer, something that had not yet decided what it was going to be. "You planned this," he said. "I prepared," I said. "There's a difference." He was quiet for 4 seconds. Then he said, "Is this because of Sasha?" And I reached into my bag one final time and placed a photograph on the table. It was a printed copy of the restaurant receipt from Cincinnati. The Precinct, a Saturday night. 2 guests, $187 before tip. He looked at the photograph for a long time. He looked at it the way you look at something when you understand that there is no arrangement of words that will rearrange what it means. He did not say anything. He did not say anything because the silence was the most honest thing left in the room. If you are still watching this right now, I want to pause for just a moment and speak to you directly. Have you ever been in a situation where you knew something was wrong, where every instinct you had was correctly reading the room, but you stayed quiet because you were not yet ready? Not because you had nothing to say, but because you were still building what you needed to say it. Drop a comment below and tell me about that moment, the moment you stopped waiting and started preparing. I read every single one. And if this channel has given you even one moment of feeling less alone in something you have carried quietly for a long time, please subscribe. There are more stories here. They are all for you. He left that evening to stay with his friend Marcus. He came back twice in the following 2 weeks. The first time, he filled 2 large bags with clothes and stood in the bedroom doorway for a moment as if he was about to say something. He did not say it. The second time, he came for the rest of his things. A box of items from the hall closet, the equipment for the home gym he had assembled in the second bedroom and used 4 times, a cast iron skillet he claimed had been his before we moved in together. I did not dispute the skillet. I made coffee while he packed. I did not hover. I was not cold. I was not performing warmth either. I was simply a woman in her own apartment, doing what she did in the mornings, while a man she had once loved packed the things that were his and prepared to go to the place I had arranged for him to go. Sasha texted me on the Thursday after he moved out. She had gotten my number from Nathan's phone. The text said, "I think we should talk. This is all a misunderstanding." Nathan was just trying to help me, and I feel terrible that this happened. I sat with the text for 20 minutes. I appreciated the impulse. I did not think she was lying about feeling terrible. I typed back, "I hope you find a good place to land. Take care." I did not block her. I did not send anything else. Sasha was not the story. She had never been the story. She was simply the moment when Nathan revealed, as cleanly as he ever would, that he had never truly factored me into the architecture of his decisions. She was the occasion. The room behind the door was not about her at all. 4 of Nathan's mutual friends reached out over the following weeks. Marcus sent a message that said Nathan was devastated and that the response seemed like a lot. I replied that I hoped Nathan was okay. 2 others sent variations of the same, softer language, same implication, that the reaction had been disproportionate, that perhaps there was room for reconciliation if I was willing to sit down and hear him out. I replied to each once, briefly and without heat, and did not follow up. The 4th friend was a woman named Gretchen, who had been in the broader circle since before Nathan and I got together. Her message said only, "I saw this coming. Call me when you're ready." I called her on a Friday afternoon and we talked for close to 2 hours. She told me, in the steady and unhurried way of someone who has been holding information carefully for a long time, that she had personally witnessed Nathan meeting Sasha on 3 separate occasions over the previous year, that Marcus had covered for him at least twice, and that she had said nothing because she had not been certain, and because she had not wanted to be the one who broke something that might have been fine. "I'm sorry," she said. "I should have said something sooner." I told her I understood. I told her it had not been fine for a long time. She said, "I know. I could see it in you. You were always managing something." I said I was. She said, "You don't have to anymore." I sat with that for a while after we hung up. Nathan called me on a Wednesday morning in the 3rd week of November at 9:47 in the morning. I was at my desk and I let it go to voicemail. I listened to it at noon in the parking structure near my building, with my lunch going warm beside me and the concrete around me very quiet. His voice on the message was different from any version of his voice I had encountered in 3 years. Not the confident one, not the deflecting one, not the one that weaponized gentleness. It was a man's voice with most of the performance removed. He said he had been thinking, that he understood now in a way he had not allowed himself to understand before, that he had treated my steadiness as a given rather than as something I was choosing every day, that he had taken for granted the one person in his life who had never once required him to earn her trust and had simply given it. He said he was not calling to ask for anything. He said, "You deserved better than I gave you. You always did." There was a pause. Then the message ended. I sat in the parking structure for a few minutes after it finished. I did not feel victorious. I want to be honest about that, because this kind of story is often told as if the ending is a triumph, as if the moment the door closes on the person who hurt you, something lifts and clarifies and you feel entirely free. It does not happen that way, or it did not happen that way for me. What I felt was something closer to the quiet that comes after a very long effort. The effort of 3 years of reading a room that kept rearranging itself. The effort of 4 months of building something careful and legal and exact, while continuing to make dinner and go to work and behave like a person who is simply living her life. I felt the weight of all of that, and underneath the weight I felt something that I will call, for lack of a more exact word, relief. Not triumph, just the specific relief of a structure that is held. I kept the apartment on Livingston. In November, Priya came over for dinner, and we sat on the rooftop deck with a bottle of wine and a plate of cheese, and we watched the Columbus skyline do what it does on clear, cold nights, which is to hold itself up against the dark with a kind of uncomplicated confidence that I have always found comforting. Priya asked me if I was okay. I said yes, and I meant it in the specific way that I meant it. Not fine, not past it, not pretending, but present. More present than I had been in quite a long time. She said, "I always knew you were the most prepared person I had ever met." I said, "I grew up in a house where being unprepared cost you something real. You learn early." She reached over and touched my arm once, briefly, and did not say anything else. She did not need to. What I have been thinking about, in the months since October, is what it means to prepare without bitterness. Because I think that is the part that people misunderstand about a story like this one. They hear the word revenge, and they imagine anger. They imagine a woman sharpening something in the dark, fueled by hurt and fury, waiting for her moment to strike. And that is not what happened. What happened was that I paid attention. I paid attention the way my mother paid attention. Not dramatically, not with commentary, but with the quiet, continuous, costly attention of a person who understands that the world will not organize itself around your needs, and so you must organize yourself, carefully and without waiting for permission. I was not angry when I sat in Patricia's office. I was clear. Clarity is not the same as coldness. Clarity is what happens when you love yourself precisely enough to stop accepting a version of your life that keeps asking you to make yourself smaller. I think about Nathan sometimes, not with longing, and not with resentment either. I think about him the way you think about a lesson that was expensive to learn, but that you carry with you now as something genuinely useful. He was not a monster. He was a man who had never been asked to pay full price for anything, including the people in his life, and who consequently had never understood that those people were paying while he was not. He learned something in that kitchen in October. I do not know what he will do with it. That is his work to do, not mine. My name is Claire Whitmore. I am 34 years old. I woke up on a Tuesday morning in October, knowing exactly what the day was going to require of me. Nathan thought he was delivering news. He was actually handing me the final piece of a structure I had been building for 4 months. The key on the kitchen table cost me $1,500 and 4 months of quiet, careful work. It was the most important investment I have ever made. Not because of what it took from him, but because of what it returned to me, myself, fully, without negotiation. And if you are sitting somewhere right now, in a car, in a break room, in a bedroom with the sound turned low, and you are in the middle of a situation that keeps asking you to deal with things that were never yours to deal with, I want you to hear this. You are not overreacting. You are reading the room correctly. The only question is when you will decide to stop adjusting to a room that was never designed with you in mind and start building one that was. That decision does not require an audience. It does not require a confrontation. It requires a separate bank account, a good attorney, and the deep, inherited knowledge that you are worth more than what someone else's comfort has been costing you. Tell me in the comments, what was the moment you knew? The moment something shifted from hope into clarity. I want to know. I read everyone. Thank you for being here today. Every single person who watches, comments, shares this with a friend who needs it. You are the reason this community exists and the reason we keep going. We put a new story on this channel every single day because there is no shortage of women who built something extraordinary in silence and whose stories deserve to be witnessed. Subscribe so you never miss one. Leave a like if this one stayed with you. And if you know someone who is in the middle of their own quiet build, someone who is paying attention and preparing and not yet ready to say it out loud, send this to her. She will know what it means. We will see you tomorrow.